Dear scholars, before starting the presentation, in the outset, I would like to say that this lecture, the major objective of this lecture is basically to understand the basic concepts of research methodologies. Then, second one, learn the different stages, or we can say to have the basic idea of research process. And finally, to develop an aptitude of research among those who are having keen interest in research and development activities. Once again, I would like to say I'm very thankful to Dr. Heba for giving an opportunity to share my experience. Shall we continue our presentation now?
Yes,
Okay.
now it is ready. Yes, it is ready.
Okay.
And
Okay.
yeah.
Dear scholars and esteemed guests, before going to make some deliberations on formal research process, we should have idea of some basic concepts. Either this is the concept of research methodology or any other concept. We should have the idea of basically what this is, why this is, where we are going to conduct this, and ultimately for whom this process is. And same is the case with a research methodology. Basically, a research is nothing but this is a systematic or scientific process to have an understanding of some concepts, phenomena, problems that we as human beings are facing at individual level, social level, national level, as well as at global level. And given this basic idea of research, next please, some scholars have given some definitions. I would not like to go in detail of those definitions because the slides are given. Like research is a systematized effort to gain new knowledge. This is something that provides solution to the problems. This is something that verifies the existing knowledge, and all that some of the scholars have given, and many more scholars. I would not like to add all those scholars, but the most important thing is why we are conducting research. What is the objective of conducting research? Basically, we may have been n number of objectives, and some of them have been summarized here. They may be to gain the familiarity with the phenomena, to portray the characteristics of a particular individual. That is what we call the descriptive research. Or we can say there is something to understand the frequency. That is what we call the diagnostic research. Yeah, simply to test our hypothesis, that is hypothesis testing research. And all these, either the descriptive research, hypothesis testing, and all that we will discuss in detail. And then second most important thing with respect to the introduction of the research is what is the motive behind the research. Again, this is in line with the objectives of the research. Understand the cause-effect relationship, to know the knowledge more efficiently, having curiosity, and some people may have the motivation of conducting the research to get the degree for social status as well. And then comes, this is the brief outline of what research is and why we conduct the research. Then one more important concept, that is how. And for that, we should have clear understanding of the base of what we are going to do. That is having the knowledge of concepts, or we can say the theory, concept of theory. Dear scholars, when we say concept, and broadly in research methodology books or research papers where it has been discussed what is research and what is not research, how we conduct research, what are the different steps of the research, we come up with that we have basically two approaches to conduct a research. One is deductive approach and one is inductive approach. But these are basically the basic footings of how to understand a concept and then conduct the research. And for this purpose, we have two approaches, two major concepts. One is deductive and one is inductive. As far as deductive is concerned, if we can say in simple words, that is basically the base word should be deductive, that is from deduce, or we can say derive. That means we derive the conclusion from given reasons, from the reasons that we either collect from field or from the lab, if it is scientific, and if it is social, behavioral, then we go in the field. And one simple example, I may quote from economics, that is, there is some problem in presentation slides. Okay. There is one famous law in economics, the law of demand. And many of those who are having the economics background may be knowing the law of demand, that is simply the inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. Now the point is how the law have been developed. Answer is very simple. It had been observed and then the survey had been conducted with respect to price and quantity demanded. When there is a change in price in upward movement, what is going to the quantity demand with respect to normal goods. Similarly, when there is a decline in the price, what is going to with quantity demand. And then it had been concluded that whenever we saw change in price, we saw an inverse change in quantity demand. And so those were the reasons, the change in price, and it had been concluded that there is inverse relationship. Means with the reasons, we come up with a conclusion. And as in the presentation, two reasons, and finally we come up with a conclusion. John is a regular employee, or regular employees can be trusted. John can be trusted. Similarly, when we say inductive approach, what we do, basically we try to induct, we try to induce from conclusion, we try to understand what are the reasons. I would like to quote one simple example. Let us say in case of India, there is one program that is called MG-NREGA. That is a rural development program. Objectives are poverty elevation, rural infrastructure, employment generation. Now, this is the fact, this is the conclusion that Manrega eradicates poverty. In order to justify this conclusion, we are trying to find the reasons how it eradicated the poverty. And for that, we conduct surveys of those who are in this scheme and then try to find, yes, does their income level of standard, level of income has really increased? Before, is there any change in the level of income before, or before and after joining this scheme? And the point is, the conclusion is given. Now we are trying to find the reasons. Yes, this is the fact, and we try to induct, we try to induce, yes, these are the basic factors which led to reduction in poverty. And this is how basically the step-by-step deductive research approach, or deductive research, this deductive approach of research is: theory, then we hypothesize, then observation, and then finally we confirm. As in case of law of demand, we have given a simple example. Similarly, when we go for inductive, there is upward. If you see arrows, they are basically upward. We start from observation, then pattern, then tentative hypothesis, and then finally cross-check the theory, fact. Dear scholars, now the point is where from these concepts come. There may be n number of factors, but Norman B has given major four sources, factors. One is theoretical perspective, one is specific research problem, one is theoretical concepts, and one is day-to-day life activities in and around you. Yes, one more important point that I would like to highlight here in the outset or in the introductory part of this research methodology is variable. Dear scholars, why I am talking of variable is the research we are going to conduct, the research we are conducting, the research that we are supposed to conduct is basically or wholly and solely dependent on a variable. That is something that is having characteristics, and based on those characteristics, we are basically defining what the phenomena is, how the phenomena is, where the phenomena is. So it is this variable that has the most important factor in defining your research. And then selection of variable is also very important. And selection of variable is only possible when you have the idea of what type of variable basically you are going to target. Different types of variables, dependent variable and independent variable. You have experimental variable and measured variable. You have discrete and continuous variables. You have qualitative and quantitative variables. You have categorical and numerical variables. Dear listeners, when we say dependent and independent, that is simply independent variable is that very variable that explains the change in dependent variable. Yeah, we can say The change in dependent variable is because of independent variable. Simple example is the change in harvest, total production, agriculture production is dependent on rainfall, use of fertilizers, and those are independent. We can change. Yeah, we can say experimental and measured variables. Yes, experimental variables are nothing but the details of investigators' measurement. That is with respect to science experiments generally. And with regard to measured variables, we have this simply means how to measure. Like rural development may be measured in terms of change in income, change in life expectancy, change in standard of living, change in infrastructure, access to healthcare facilities, all that. Those are some of the factors through which we can measure. Then comes the discrete and continuous variables. Discrete variables, where it is categorically, clearly mentioned. Like if we have a sample of 10 people and want to know the age of those very 10 people, simply we say the age of first one is 15 years, second is 16, third is 20, and like that. But in case of continuous variable, this we apply when you have a large data, then we make use of bands. Those people who are in the age group of 10 to 15, 15 to 20, 20 to 30, there is continuity. Then comes qualitative and quantitative data. Qualitative data is that can't be measured, like honesty, beauty, and similarly quantitative that can be quantified, like age, income. Similarly, categorical and numerical variables. When we say categorical variables, categorical means they are basically having categories, like there is no such ordering. We say gender, male and female, religion, Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, specific categories. But when we say numerical data, it is having some numerical value, 10, 12, 15, and all that, where ordering is also possible. Dear listeners, this was basically the outset of the basic concepts of research, and the research process starts now. The research process starts from defining the research problem, then a review of literature, then a research gap, finally research formulation of research hypothesis, then a research design, sample design, then data collection, analysis of data, interpretation, and report writing. Dear listeners, when we say research problem, this is, if we say in narrow sense, a question that we are trying to find the solution. An issue with which we are trying to deal in a scientific manner, understand what are the factors, why this is, how to cope up with this, and all that. Means the research process or research problem, the most important thing that we are supposed to do is the selection of problem and formulation of research problem. Now the question is how we can select a research problem, how we can formulate a research problem. In this slide, I have mentioned some of the sources where from research problem, where from we can identify the research problem. but this is a narrow sentence. One or two slides after this slide, I will tell you where from basically this research problem come. And these are some of the sources like reading, academic experience, daily experience, exposure to field situations, consultation, research, intuition, means your day-to-day activities and all that. Those are responsible for, sometimes some uneven happenings like you have COVID nowadays. Now, this is a hot debate nowadays, and everyone is trying to have research on this very, hot debated issue, like what are the factors responsible for COVID-19? What are the consequences on political, social, economic, and global level? How we can cope up with this very problem? Means this is something we don't have read about it. This is something that unexpectedly, unprecedentedly came, and we are facing with this problem. Now researchers are in search of solution to this very problem. Criteria, leaving this aside. Okay, this aside, step, yes. Then we go with after the formulation of research proposal. Yeah, when we come up with a problem, then one of the main important point is that is to develop the objectives. And developing objectives means to develop the questions that the study is going to answer. Let us say COVID is an issue, and now as researchers, we may have n number of questions in our mind, like what type of vaccine should we use? 2, what is the age group that is most affected by this? 3, why some regions are more affected as compared to other regions? 5th, what are the economic consequences? 6th, who is the loser and the gainer in the COVID-19? 7th, what would be the new world order? And many more questions. But as human beings and as social scientists, we have the problems of time, finance, funding, we can say, then uncontrolled variable, that is human behavior, and heterogeneous behavior of the questioners. What I mean to say heterogeneous behavior of questioners, like if I'm a student of economics, my objective will be what would be the economic consequences of COVID-19. If somebody is from political science background, his or her focus will be what will be the political consequence of COVID-19. And if somebody is from international relations, his or her focus will be what will be the new world order with respect to international relations and all that. Similarly, with respect to science and all those areas where the research is being conducted. Now, my point here is to give this reference is as long as we don't have clear-cut objective, what we are supposed to do and what is achievable, we can't do or we can't conduct a meaningful research. So defining our objectives, defining what we are going to do is basically what we call the establishment of research objectives. Now the question is, yes, this is my major focus of the presentation. That is, either we say objectives or we say research proposal yeah, development of a research proposal, yeah, research topic. We can say, yeah, we can say simply development of a research questions. Yeah, we can say development of concept or theory. The answer comes from available literature because except few uneven happenings like COVID, where only the medical issue is unprecedented. Otherwise, we had the experience of previously all those feminines, all those financial crises, all those wars who have destabilized the globe at their times. And after the destabilization of globe, we very well know by the literature what strategies had been developed with the for the period of time in order to overcome from that very destabilization. Similar is the case with COVID-19. And this comes from the literature that is available with you. That is why the research, yeah, in conducting the research, the one of the major important tool, one of the major factor that is responsible to develop a concrete and well-established research proposal is a review of literature, because it gives us the idea what is being done, how it is done, and where it is lagging. And given this importance of a review of literature, basically we have categorized this review of literature into three main subgroups. First one is a review of concepts and theories. Dear scholars, the review of concepts and theories, what I had seen is missing among majority of the studies. Why I am saying this at number one? Because area in which you are going to conduct research, in which you are going to provide solution to the problem, in which you are going to make your efforts add some new knowledge or to understand the existing knowledge. As long as we don't have clear concepts and theories, there is no fun of going ahead with any research. So, a review of concepts and theories in any of the research area is very much important. So, dear learners, dear scholars, dear listeners, whenever you are going to start your research, the first thing that you should do is to make concepts and theories clear. Go through original works, go through original texts, go through original theories, understand the concepts, and understand the theories. Then you can go ahead with the already previous research studies and try to understand what they have done, what how they have done, why they have done, and what are the major policy implications, that is research findings of those studies. That is the second step you should go. That is, first is to understand the concepts and theories. Second is to review the previous studies that have been done in line with the research you are supposed, yeah, you are willing or you are going to conduct. Yes, then third important point is a review of methodologies. And that is why at the outset, when I started my lecture, I told you that this is research methodologies, not the research methodology. Because this is not one method, there is a combination of methods. Reviewing concepts and theories, reviewing data analysis techniques, reviewing data collection techniques. Means this is a combination of techniques. So we call it research methodologies, not the method. Please keep it in mind. Then, with regard to review of methodologies, there are different approach. Some may go for inductive approach, some may go for deductive approach. That is one broader categorization. Then there are categorizations like one may go for simple descriptive statistics, one may go for modeling, if you say in financial or economic terms. Means to say you have different approaches to understand the problem. Or we can say there is empirical approach and there is historical or theoretical approach. So in order to, yeah, before going ahead with your research process, with your research proposal, with your research work, please try to understand or go through the methodologies that have been adopted previously, and most importantly, either among the findings of previous studies, either among the review of methodologies of previous studies, or going through the concepts and theories. What is most important for a research scholar, what is most important for a researcher, what is most important for we people is to understand what is lagging in existing literature, what is missing in existing studies, and that is what we call research gap. Because this is the research gap that provides platform for objectives of the study. Means this is the research gap that provides a basic idea how to develop your objectives of the study. Because as long as you don't know the gap of previously conducted research, you can never develop a good objectives. Why? Maybe the objectives which you are going to develop in line with your research proposal, those had been already done by some earlier researcher. So as long as we don't have idea what is missing, why this is not up to the mark, yeah, why the policy suggestion is given by the previously conducted research studies, why they are not up to mark, then only you can develop new objectives, and in line with those objectives you can go with new research objectives and new research proposal, a research study, and then in line with those new objectives, there will be something that will add to existing knowledge. There will be something that will add to our domain of knowledge that will help us to overcome from the problems with which we as social animals are facing, or at that is individual level or at global or national level we are facing. Dear listeners, dear scholars, then this is the purpose of review that I have already explained with you. One more slide is that is how to conduct research literature review. Yeah, review of literature. Basically, identification of relevant sources is very much important. And that identification and extract and record of relevant information is only possible when you go through original works, and from there original research studies, from there you can trace the same types of studies that have been done. Suppose there is some study on political instability in South Asia, let us say, and somebody had wrote paper, and in that very paper he had cited some of the studies already conducted. If you are going to conduct a research on the same area, then you go for that very paper. From that very paper, you can trace the rest of the references and download them, then write up the literature review. It is only possible when you go through original works, referred works, relevant works of the study that you are going to conduct. Then sources. What are the sources? Sources may be books, journals, electronic databases, bibliographic databases, abstract databases, full text databases, government and industry reports, internet, and then you have research dissertations or theses. When you say books and journals, you have many databases like Elsevier, you have Embryology, you have those journal databases, you have Ender Science, you have many databases where from you can get those journals. And for books, you should have access to original texts. Then you have some government industry reports like those published by the government, like in case of India, you have economic survey, you have statistical abstracts. Then internet, on internet you have well-known databases like India Stat, you have IMF database, you have World Bank where there is abundance of data, you have research dissertations and theses, as in case of, if you see in India, you have Shodh Ganga. If you see in Pakistan, there is what we call this research repository. And for every country, they have these databases for research dissertations and theses. You can download them, you can refer to original works, you can go through, and then you can only understand how to conduct a research after going through original works and those what we call the research journals, books. Yeah, going through databases, you can get the idea of what is being done in the area. And simply going on those databases or going on those what we call the sites through government sites or books or journals, especially electronic databases, you simply enter keyword, you get all the details about that very area. That is one of the important benefit of using the online and or electronic databases. Then points that you should capture in your mind while reviewing the literature. Read relevant literature, already told you, refer original works, read with comprehension, read in time, and index the literature. Indexing the literature is very much important, that whatever you are that is whatever you are reading, you should have clear idea in which area, in which area, what papers you have, what books, yeah, what studies, yeah, what reports you have gone through. Like in case of review of methodologies, you should have an index that you should have jotted with you, either on I can say on your system, because we have now different types of softwares where we can index the literature, like we have MATLAB, Staro, and all that I'm not going to discuss here. Or the techniques or softwares, you can simply jot down all those research that you are going through. You can index it manually on your notebook. Then, yes, formulation of hypothesis. One more important. After going through this research, I mean, after going through a review of literature, and that I already mentioned you, the major objective of reviewing the literature is to find the research gaps, to find what is missing in the existing literature, to find why there is a scope for further research. And here I would like to mention one important thing that you can note down. Whenever you are going to conduct any of the research, a good A fair and ethical research demands from you that at the end, if you have understood the research problem very well, if you have gone through a research problem minutely, if you have understood it honestly, then as a researcher, your prime job is, along with your conclusion, policy suggestion, and all that, you should be able to provide one important point, that is scope for further research. And that is what we here in review of literature call the research gap. Given the research gap, this acts as a base for what we call the objectives, already discussed, objectives of the study. Then, based on the objectives, we hypothesize. Like, I will quote one example. Let us say we have an objective with respect to COVID, because this is the current debate. That is why I am repeating again and again COVID. Because one more important why I'm this quoting COVID. Reason is this is a multidisciplinary type of research problem. For science, political science, IR, economics, sociology, everyone can do research in this field. And let us say our objective that we are going to conduct a research with respect to COVID is what will be the consequences of, yeah, this is basically research question. I can say research objective to understand the impact of COVID on human capital formation. Impact of COVID on human capital formation. This is our research objective. Then hypothesis, that is simply a predictive statement of what we are basically understanding, yeah, what we are going to presume. The hypothesis may be like this. The human capital formation, yeah, we can say there is negative impact on human capital formation because of this COVID. Yeah, positive, whatever we can say. That is what we are, because our objective is to understand, yeah, examine the impact. Impact may be positive or negative. Now, as we have gone through literature, let us say we have understood the problem, and then we presume there may be, let us say, there may not be any impact. We can say there may not be any impact of COVID on human capital formation, let us say. And we simply say there may not be any impact on human capital formation. That is what we hypothesize, what we predict. Then it is the data, it is the information that we get from the field, and then finally test, is this right or wrong? Is this statement we are propagating, either we are going to accept it or reject it? Simply, what I am saying is, after going through review of literature, you find the research gaps, then you develop your objectives, and finally you come up with a tentative statement that this is going to this direction or that direction. And basically, when we have developed the hypothesis statement, then what is most important, after developing this hypothesis, that is to test that very hypothesis. That hypothesis, either we reject it or accept it. In testing, we have two approaches again. That is, one, there is null hypothesis, and second is alternate hypothesis. I would not like to go in technical details of these null and alternate hypotheses. In simple words, we can say, when null hypothesis, that means we say there is no difference what we are basically stating. Like, if we like to give an example, that is, Uh, with respect to family income and the standard of living, yeah, we can say there is no relationship between family income and human capital formation with respect to that very family. And when we collect the data, after collecting the data, we analyze it and then cross-check it with family income and standard of living, or we can say human capital formation, or we can say level of education. And if there is a relation, if there is impact, we reject our what we have proposed. And then we accept otherwise. That is what we call the alternate hypothesis. Simply testing is to judge our statement, what we have made, either to accept or to reject that we have made in line with our objectives. Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Yes, we are hearing
Okay.
you.
Okay. This presentation is not there. That is why I'm asking. Okay. Now, the most important, one more important point that is with regard to this research process after review of literature, development of objectives, finding research gap, then developing your hypothesis, developing your statement of rejection or exception. Then the point is of what we are going to accept or reject. Or we can say we are going to conduct the research, we are going to develop the objectives. The point is of what we are going to develop the objectives, and that is what we call the data. Basically, the information from which we get this all. Basically, when we say data, that is a collective information, and it is this data that provides us a room for justifying our objectives, testing our proposed hypothesis, coming up with conclusions, and making some interpretations or policy suggestions for those who are at the helm of affairs. Dear listeners, when we say data collection or sample selection, this is simply, let us say, our issue or our topic again. I'm going back with COVID. We are facing with the problem of COVID. Then the research topic or research proposal, yeah, research problem that we are going to conduct is to understand the impact of COVID on human capital formation. That is our research proposal. Now, one point is to select what we are going to test this research question, where we are going to test our proposed hypothesis. That is, there is no impact of COVID on human capital formation. The question is where we are going to test this. Is there any field? Yes. The answer is very simple. Either we are going to test it at a national level, global level, local level, that where we are going to test it becomes our sample space. If I quote an example, simple example, like I want to test or I want to check the, IQ index of students of Jindal University, let us say. So at that time, my population is the students of Jindal University. Similarly, if I want to understand the impact of COVID on human capital formation, before conducting this research, I am supposed to select my population. my sample space. And let us say, if we take the case of India, the most hotspot is one of the most hotspots is that is Maharashtra. So I will select Maharashtra as my sample space. Then, and those who are affected with COVID, or in general, the population of Maharashtra becomes the population of my research proposal. Then the point is, given the limitations of funding, given the limitations of time, given the limitations of access, and one of the important points that we know within a sample space is homogeneity of the population. Means when we take the case of example of Maharashtra, yeah, the students of Jindal University, we know the Jindal University students of, let us say, engineering students, they are having some 4 or 5 branches, let us say, and those having civil as their specialization, they have one of the homogeneous character that they have same subjects. Their understanding towards civil engineering is same. Similarly, with respect to computer engineering, they have their homogeneity. Means among Jindal University, there are some subgroups, some homogeneity. So out of 60 students a class, we are not going to take all the 60 students. We take some subset of that very population or that very class that will act as a representative of whole population, that we can say is the sample of the population, and that very sample should be representative of whole population, and that sample would act as a respondent for we people, where from we can get information, and that very collected information will act as data. Now the point is how we collect that very information, that is via sampling. And broadly, we have two different categories of sampling. One is probability, one is non-probability. I will not go into technical details of those. Simply, I will start from simple random sampling. When your population is homogeneous, you go for simple random sampling, where every sample has equal chance to be selected. And if your population is not homogeneous and is large, then you go for stratification. You make small homogeneous subgroups, and out of those small homogeneous subgroups, you select some representative samples from those very small subgroups. Then one more is cluster sampling. That is when it is a type of when there is a type of hierarchy, like you are trying to understand the efficiency of banks in India, yeah, level of profitability of banks in India. You have, my point is with respect to like those regional rural banks, because there is hierarchy. There is central, yeah, those who are at state level, national level, state level, then district level, and there is some type of hierarchy. In order to have this, sample selection from those hierarchical data, you go for cluster sampling. And one more important, that is snowball sampling. This has major implications nowadays, because this is the sampling that is done especially in the activities which are illegal or hidden. Suppose if you are going to conduct a survey of those who are uh, drug addicts, then it is common sense that no one is going to expose itself that I am this drug addict. What the researcher is going to do, he has to identify one, and then with the help of this, he can reach to as many as who are involved in detective process. What is happening there? There is a chain type of linkage between those who are in this very illegal activity, and then researchers researcher has to become adaptive in order to trace at least one who can help him to reach as many as he has to find for his research process. Then comes the convenience and purposive sampling. They are non-scientific, and while there is no scientific mechanism applied, they are based on easiness, convenience, based on your ease. You select your own district to understand the COVID behavior. If there is no one, yeah, if there is no impact of COVID in your district, because you choose because of your convenience, then the result will be, or the interpretation or the outcome of the research will be nothing or futile. So these are scientific sampling techniques, not having that much value in conducting scientific research or real research or objective research. And what type of data sampling technique we are using depends upon the data you are, or the nature of data, or the nature of your sample that you are going to analyze. Then comes one more important thing, that is collection of data. Yeah, data collection and execution. Now you have chosen your sample space. First, you have chosen your sample space, then population. Out of population, you have selected sample. Depends upon the nature of the data, you adopting the sampling technique. And one more important point that you are going to understand is what type of data you are going to collect. There are various types of data: primary, secondary, time series, cross-sectional, panel, pooled, qualitative, quantitative, categorical, and numerical. I will give a brief gist of these all types of data. Primary is first-hand data. You go in the field, you collect the data by yourself and then interpret. Secondary is that is collected by some organization or somebody for their purpose. You use data, you manipulate that very data for your research activities, and that is what we call the secondary data. And then secondary data, there is in secondary data there is cross-sectional data. Sorry, time series. Cross-sectional is generally in case of primary data. Cross-sectional data is that we go in the field, we collect once, and our job is done. That is for one purpose, only for the organization or the researcher that is conducting for himself or herself. Time series data is basically over the period of time, for a long period of time. Suppose the GDP data of India, it is from the data like 1950 to 2020, or it may be from income, data of per capita income of India, like that. That is for a period of time, or the period of time. And cross section is at a point of time. Then one more is panel and pool data. When we say, let us say we are conducting a survey in Haryana, and the objective of survey is to understand the impact of Manrega on rural Haryana. Impact of Manrega on rural Haryana. For that purpose, we go, let us say, on 3rd of May, and we conducting a survey. What is your behavior? How much you are how much you are earning? How many days of job you are getting? Is there any benefit for you or not? Is there any infrastructure? Like n number of questions we are asking from the respondents. One. Then we came back, analyze the data, interpret the data. This is this. And after 1 year, we are again going to the same place and want to know the change in their life standard due to Manrega. And again, we go with the same questions. And now we have two issues. One, we may go to the same number of same correspondents that we have interviewed, that from which where we have collected data 1 year ago, or we can go in the same area, same sample space, but this time the respondents will be different. Two cases. One, we are conducting survey more than once, and when it is more than once, this becomes somehow over the period of time series nature. One. Number two, the problem is one case we are targeting same respondents that we have targeted 1 year before, 2 years before, 3 years before, or we are going to target the population different from those that we had earlier interviewed. When we are targeting the same population, then we say this is pool data. And when we are targeting different population, then we say when we are targeting same population, means which we have interviewed 1 year, 2 year, 3 year before, targeting the same population with same questionnaire is panel data, and targeting the same sample space, same questionnaire with different respondents is pool data. Panel data, same respondents over the period of time. Pool data, different respondents over the period of time, but out of same sample space. Then comes qualitative and quantitative, already cleared. That is, when it is qualitative, that is not quantifiable, like your gender, religion, sex. And when it is quantitative, then income, age, and then categorical, we have already mentioned in the variable case. That is when there is categories like religion, gender, and we have numerical that can be quantifiable in numbers, your income, and all that. Now, how? Okay, this is types of data and data. Then how we collected this data, the data collection techniques. We have many techniques, many ways to collect our data. One is survey. In survey, you have two approaches. One is questionnaire and one is interview schedule. Please keep in mind that interview and questionnaire is different. Questionnaire means you develop questions in line with your objectives, in line with your research proposal, then make a printout of that and distribute among your what we call your respondents. They fill it by itself. And interview schedule is you fill the same questionnaire, you simply interview them and you fill it by yourself. So this is the difference. And there are limitations and pros and consequences in both that I'm not going to discuss in detail. Then group assessments, simply expert or peer reviews, interviews and all that. Yeah, expert reviews. Observations that you observe, case studies, and data extraction techniques. That is, in case of secondary data, you have many databases, and from those databases you extract data of your need. Like you have database, you have IMF that provides large amount of data sets, you have World Bank, you have, in case of India, RBI, you have, we can say, you have one database that is IndiaStat, and all that. You have databases, you should know the data extracting techniques, and that is basically in case of secondary or secondary data. And after this, collection of data, after to say defining your data, collecting your data, the most important thing that you are going before the analysis is to conduct a plot survey. Means you go for a temporary survey, check your questionnaire that you have developed in order to understand, are you getting the responses, are you getting what you are supposed to have, your objectives in your research proposal. And if it is okay, then go ahead with that very questionnaire, with that very interview schedule. If it needs some changes, you can go for change. Then after collecting data, after defining data, after defining sample space, samples selection, then what is important is a data analysis. How to analyze the data? Basically, we have two techniques, we have two modes. One is descriptive analysis and one is inferential analysis. In descriptive analysis, we describe data, we describe numerical values, we estimate them, like using mean, mode, median, frequencies, and all that. It is not the end, because if you are the students of finance, economics, management, and all that, you should know there are n number of models like econometric models, mathematical estimations, through which you can go for data analysis. Because when you collect data, that is a raw data, and raw data never gives us any information. There is need of categorization. There is need of to have some conclusion from the data that we have collected, and that very categorization, that very making the data presentable, making the data to give some information, that is basically the idea behind the descriptive analysis. Then the inferential is to draw conclusions from the numerical values that we have obtained, that we have got in descriptive analysis. And there are n number of techniques, and that is what I have told you in review of literature, that there are different types of methodologies, different types of models, different types of techniques that each and every researcher goes for. And it may be quantitative, it may be qualitative, whatever may be the objective of the researcher, it goes in the way and tries to justify objectively. One important thing that you have to keep in your mind while going through the research is objectivity. You shouldn't be subjective. You shouldn't be subjective, means you shouldn't be define or discuss or describe or interpret the results with respect to you. It should be in line with what the data reveals, what the data tells, in line with your objectives. And finally, the most important point, that everyone cares, that those who don't have that very good understanding of research methodology, data collection, those who don't have scientific approach, what they value is interpretation of your results, interpretation of what you have done. That is much more valuable, that values for the common man, are those even who are at the helm of affairs. Means interpretation is nothing but the process of making the sense of numerical data that has been collected, analyzed, and presented. And it is you who have the task of drawing the inferences from collected facts after analytical or experimental study. It is the report that values for non-technical. It should be in lucid language, as simple as possible. And finally, your policy suggestions and what I have earlier suggested, your limitations of the study that will become the scope for further research. Thank you.